Hey guys, Dr. Darla Nofziger here. So I am going to be sharing with you the thing that is kind of most on my heart for using energetic medicine and has been forever. And that is how to energetically test foods and clear them of your kind of reactivity. So before I get started on going through the actual testing, um, I need to kind of go over a couple um, basic recommendations, a little bit about just foods in general. Now, I'm not here to tell you how to eat, okay? Obviously, best to eat clean and blah, blah, whatever, non-junky and this and that. In the United States, it's all junky to a large degree, even good, wholesome, what I call God foods, very natural, very clean, still are not clean. They're poisoning our water, our air, everything. So, you know, um, and this is the reason why this is so important now. Because of all of that stuff that we can't even get away from, we are reacting more and more and more and more to our foods. So, so let's just start out kind of how food allergies and sensitivities happen to begin with. So, obviously, the more complicated, and when I say complicated, I mean, um, take, like a Thanksgiving dinner, you know, as a perfect example. On Thanksgiving, we eat a lot of very rich, very processed, we eat things that we wouldn't normally eat, right? Things with gravies and sauces and, you know, uh, things that start out with canned, how many canned foods, how many boxed foods, how many convenience items, things, right? And then we pile all of those together. So that's when I say complicated, that's what I mean. Um, just lots of different combinations of foods and, some of which are natural and some of which are just what I'll just junky, right? Bioengineered and genetically modified, like all of the things. Okay. So the more complicated, the more processed, the more unnatural, red dye number, whatever, like all of the things, right? All of the things that you can't even pronounce and whatever. The more of those are layered in, the more complicated the food is, the more likely it is that those beautiful organic carrots that you started out with that have been mixed with whatever junky things, your body cannot separate out the junky things from those beautiful organic carrots. Um, so the more tainted or like contaminated the foods are with pathogens or that kind of stuff. Again, the body cannot tell, like, let's say, those organic, beautifully grown carrots are still getting nanoparticles or various, aluminum that's in our air, with the um, the geoengineering stuff that they're putting out in the air and contaminated water. And, maybe they're, contaminated with mold spores or, fungal strains or whatever. The more you've got things that are not friendly to the immune system coupled with those amazing, beautiful, organic, natural foods, the more your immune system and nervous system cannot tell the difference between those foods, right? So it just reacts to the whole lot. Okay. So that's generally how food allergies and sensitivities develop. And then from there, the more reactive the body is, the more likely you are to get that muscle test of weak. Okay. So that's kind of in a nutshell, like how that starts out. So the other thing to keep in mind when you're testing is that if you muscle test your foods with a good digestive enzyme, a broad spectrum digestive enzyme, my personal, what I view as like my primary enzyme, right, is HP series by Allegheny Nutrition. That one is a plant enzyme, um, fully vegetarian, vegan. Um, so that's my primary enzyme for mainly breaking down the foods. I do like, um, I also do hydrochloric acid with betaine when I'm when I'm eating meat, um, especially anything red or white, other than like, flaky fish or whatever, which I don't eat a lot of fish. So, those harder to digest animal proteins, I need some additional support, whatever. So, so if you have like the good broad spectrum antibiotic in your field, or um, basically intending them, or, basically added to your testing session when you're testing the foods, the less reactive you're going to be. And that basically lets you know that a lot of those sensitivities likely come about just because you don't have enough enzymatic activity to break those foods down fully. And the more you don't break them down fully, the more likely you are to react. Okay. And those reactions can be anything from just, minor headaches. Sometimes they affect your mood. They can, down to like full blown. I mean, obviously, if you have a full blown IgE allergy, like your throat might close up and you start like, hives, and, can be actually life threatening, dangerous, whatever. So the reactivity of foods, and obviously, if you have an IgE allergy, it, right? I mean, you're walking around with an EpiPen. Okay, so when you're just going through the testing process, it's good to like, you know, and basically everybody should be using a digestive enzyme every meal. The fact is, there is not a single biochemical process in your body that happens without an enzyme present. This is just a fact. And nobody's out there saying these things. You need to be taking an enzyme with your food. They're not even present anymore in our food. They are purposely irradiating the food. And now with 5G and everything out, like all of the EMF that we come in contact, I mean, those enzymes are being destroyed by just even, the normal radiation that we're all getting. So, let alone the stuff that they're purposely doing. Okay. So basically, eat your foods with an enzyme and do your muscle testing with a good broad spectrum enzyme. Now, I probably really do need to like do a full testing on, helping you determine and find your best primary enzyme. That's like life changing for most people, like in a big, huge way. But I'm just, it's not the point of this thing. Okay. Now, the next point, as far as, before we get into our muscle testing, is knowing the fact that once you react to a food, the more likely you will always be to react to that food. I mean, essentially, you can think of it as developing an allergy, a sensitivity, an intolerance. An intolerance is a little bit different because with intolerances, basically, intolerance just means it's kind of the open bucket situation. Like, you'll be okay with a food until you just overdo it. And then you're just done. That's it. That's all. And then you'll start reacting. Now, a lot of intolerances will fall away with an enzyme because usually what happens, and let's take sugar as a perfect example. Like, you'll do okay with just a little bit of sugar. But if you're like really, really getting lots of sugar, unless you have, the I can't even think of what it is. The enzymes present to help you break down those sugars, you've just reached the limit. That's it. That's all. Um, so again, that's one of the reasons why just great to have when you're doing the testing to have your primary enzyme present while you're doing it. Now, so once you react, you're likely to just continue to react every time you get in contact with that food in some way, shape, or form, unless you take some type of intervention. Now, sometimes, just starting to take enzymes, sometimes probiotics help. Definitely, like if you have gut permeability to basically repair your gut, will sometimes be enough to just like help a lot of those food issues. But many times it's not. So, like, unless you basically do some type of energetic reset, something like this type of technique or techniques that I'm going to show you, you're likely to just keep constantly reacting to that food until you like reset it and clear it out. And you can just think of that like, if we were a computer program, right? It's like we're just storing this reactivity like in our cache, right? And all of these these energetic corrections just help to clear that cache out and like help the body just view that food like it's like it hasn't eaten it a million times with all these complicated crazy things that it's had to react to in the past. So it just kind of like gives you a fresh start of just like a brand new program and you know that kind of thing. Okay, the last thing I want to say is if you um if you've forgotten to like test your food, and I do this all the time, even though like I know I really need to be testing everything I eat and drink, um before, not after, because after is kind of too late. By that time I'm bloated, I'm maybe nauseous, I'm maybe headaches, I'm waking up in the morning with major joint pain, like whatever the reactivity is. And there's a bunch of different possibilities, and I'm not going to run all those down. And chances are you kind of know those foods that just don't do you right, right? In some way, shape, or form, or whatever. And many times you're pretty sure it's a food, but you can't even drill into which one without all kinds of like, whatever avoidance and crazy stuff. So if you forget your muscle testing and you're reacting to a food, basically, you're getting all kinds of unwanted side effects and, from the sensitivities and intolerances and that kind of thing. Take your primary enzyme on an empty stomach, especially one that's high in protease. So that protease will basically break up the antibody antigen chain, which all that is essentially are protein chains. So if you get in there on an empty stomach, and those are what do they call them? I think they call them immune circulating complexes. Okay. But basically, what that is it's the antibody antigen chain of proteins that come together and form like the reaction. So if you just take a good broad spectrum digestive enzyme on an empty stomach, it will get in there and break up those protein chains. Okay. Now, if you tend to have inflammatory responses often, with lots of inflammation the next day, um, you know, a lot of times, if somebody like doesn't digest protein well, it might come in the form of like high uric acids and things like that. Um, anything that produces that inflammatory response, then you can take a proteolytic enzyme on an empty stomach and basically help to reduce that inflammation, that inflammatory response. So those are kind of my best go-to, like, oh gosh, I forgot, or, I don't even know what I'm reacting to, but I'm reacting to something. That's kind of your go-to, your cheats of like how to just feel better in the short term. Because some of those responses, like the IgE or the IgG and IgA allergies kind of responses, whatever, some of those can last for like weeks, where you're just like, I've got this headache, or um, chronic fatigue is a big one. Like joint pain is probably like one of the top ones. Sometimes it's kind of muscular. I mean, personally, I think all fibromyalgia is nothing but basically reactions to foods, period. Like, that's it, that's all. And probably most inflammatory responses, I feel like, are, you know, a lot of joint pain, um, and maybe even to some degree a lot of anti-inflammatory responses, um, because basically your cells are so toxic to itself that that's what's creating the immune response against your own tissues. So those are kind of my best ideas for kind of before you even get started with the testing, to just help make your food more, and just more compatible right off the get-go, and to reduce some of the clearings that you're going to have to do and that kind of thing. So hopefully you found this helpful. Next, we're going to do basically how to the basic muscle testing kind of, and I'm not really going to teach muscle testing, and that's not what I'm doing. So I mean, I will be showing you my preferred muscle testing technique and that kind of thing, but I'm not going to be, here's the who, what, where, when. You know, that's not the point of this. So if you need help muscle testing, um, I will either have a whole program just for that, or, you can go hit YouTube and some other places for that. So until the next video, I'll see y'all soon.